Welcome to Impact Farming, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that will have a massive impact on your farming operation. Brought to you by Farm Marketer. Sit down, start the engine, and let's roll with today's show.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Impact Farming Show. Today I have an awesome guest. I have Jason Medows joining us. Welcome, Jason. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me here. I'm really excited to chat all things involved with what we're doing.
All things mental health.
Yes.
You are my Instagram buddy, and It's so nice to have you on the show. I know we've chit-chatted, commented on each other's posts, so I won't keep you guys in suspense. Jason is the creator and host of the Ag State of Mind podcast. So I'm happy to have him on the show. As part of our ongoing mental health series, I'm taking, as you know, Jason, as you guys know in the audience, I'm taking the better part of September and October to support our mental health as we go through some tough farming years and navigate the crazy pandemic world that we find ourselves in Canada here. So, Jason, I'm super excited to have you on the show, and I want you to dive in. We're going to talk about your podcast, about who you are, lots of fun stuff. You have a podcast, and I won't go into it too deep, but really dedicated to mental health. And that's why I wanted to get you on here and share with our audience, because this conversation is so important on a good year, let alone a bad year, right? So without further ado, Jason, can you tell us a little bit more about your podcast and why? Actually, you know what? Step back, tell me about you, and then go into your podcast and then why you started it. Let's do it that way.
So this question always I read a book last year, it was earlier this year, by Brene Brown, The Gift of Imperfection. And in there, she talks about, for a long time, she always felt so crazy about this question because she felt like there was so much to her. And instead of really trying to kind of narrow it down to who she is, she stops and says, well, how much time do you have? So that's how I always feel about myself when I'm telling to people. So I'm from Cuba, Missouri, just a little outside St. Louis. I was born and raised on my father's cow-calf operation. We're in the Ozarks of Missouri. So there's two states of Missouri, really. I mean, geographically, there's this northern part, which is like southern Iowa, prime farm ground. And then there's the southern part of Missouri where I'm from, which is rolling hills, grassland, just two completely different states. We call where I live kind of northern Arkansas. It's just totally different, two different states, and it's divided right in the middle. So we're in the cow country part of the state. My dad owned the local livestock market for many years. He sold it when I was a kid, but he still had the cow-calf operation. But also part of my family also owned a pharmacy in town. So I worked there throughout high school and decided that was the career path I was going to go down. So I went to pharmacy school. But while I was in pharmacy school, I had this yo-yo effect with where I am and who I am. So when I was in pharmacy school, I started my own cow-calf operation. We found a small farm for me to rent just down the road. My dad would take care of the cows during the week, and then I'd come home, I'd work for him, do the whole thing. And so I had started my own herd when I was in college, graduated 2008, moved back home I went to college in St. Louis. I don't know if I mentioned that, for 6 years, obtained my doctorate of pharmacy, moved back, worked at a local hospital here, just same place where I work now. It's there I met my wife. My wife she was obviously not my wife yet, but she had just graduated from nursing school as well. So we met there while we were both, young in our careers. And fast forward to today, we live on a farm together. I still work at the hospital. She actually she was a nurse there until last year when she totally stepped away from it. She actually opened her own yoga studio this past year, at the beginning of this year. Now we have 4 boys, and life's just crazy. And as you mentioned, in 2019, I started my podcast, the Ag State of Mind podcast, because I found that I had struggled with my mental health and I had gotten better, right? So I knew that there had to be other people who struggled like me, but wanted to get better, but didn't necessarily know how. And I felt like I had an obligation understanding things from so many different angles, from a healthcare angle, from an agriculture angle. Like you've talked about with previous guests, people don't always want to listen to it in agriculture if it isn't coming from somebody who understands the lifestyle. So I felt like I had a very important part to play in that. And then, having the struggles myself and being able to, really have this unique point of view. And I felt like I served a little bit bigger purpose, right? And I felt like I had a message to share. And I had no idea what it would take to start a podcast. I didn't know, I barely knew what Zoom was. I mean, that's hilarious now, and we're in this pandemic world where Zoom is like just another part of our vernacular now, right? Like everybody knows what it is, but very few people knew what it was back then, which is hilarious. But so I started out, I got some help from some really, really great people to help me start my podcast. And here we are, almost 2 years later. I'm not sure when this will come out, but as of September 30th, it'll be a 2-year anniversary of the podcast. And we're, 100 plus episodes in. And, I still have a backlog of people who I've wanted to talk to from the very beginning that I haven't had a chance to, because of just so many great people that want to chat.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you.
Thank you.
Years. That's a long time. And as you and I both know, it takes a lot of content and a lot of time to put this out, right? And what did I read sometime around the beginning of launching this show, most people launch like a podcast. They do about 10 episodes and they hit the wall because, at the beginning it's exciting and new. And then you have that momentum. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute. I got to get a guest every week, right?
Yeah.
So
I totally expected that to happen. Like I was ready for that to happen. It's like, all right, this is happening. I wasn't getting in fact, I was like, I'm probably just going to create, I think 8 was my number. I'm going to have 8 because it was like 2 months. Right. And I'm going to start this podcast and see how it goes and see where it goes from there. Well, it just absolutely just took off and found so many people with so many interesting stories. And I just, I like I said, I have more than I can handle at the moment.
I agree. And you know what? Mental health is so important. And we all have mental health, like we have physical health, and it's a sliding scale, right? And in agriculture, there's so much out of your control that mental health becomes a big part of it. So I'm so happy that you're doing what you're doing, and kudos to you on the good work. I love it.
Thank you.
So I'm curious. It's fun. This is actually my first time, I think, talking to another podcaster. Oh no, I've interviewed 1 or 2, but I want to ask you this. What are some of your biggest lessons that you've learned through your podcasting journey?
Oh gosh. Okay. The biggest thing is I'm not a schedule person, right? Like I am fly by the seat of my pants, shoot from the hip. I think we discussed a little bit before. Like I don't really even prepare like an outline before podcast. I did at the beginning, but now I'm just like, let's roll with it, But getting a little bit organized, that was a really hard lesson for me to really, and I don't think I really, because my wife, she's super organized, and she's like, you've got to get better organized to get this going if you're ever going to make this work. And I think I really took that to heart and made scheduling and things, making my scheduling easier, getting out ahead of things. I think that's probably like, as far as like the biggest advice I could give to someone who wants to start a podcast is get really front load it, get it really organized in the beginning, especially your schedule with when you're going to record, with whom you're going to record, because you know, let's face it, people have busy schedules. We know that. I mean, people are busy. I'm busy. I know I'm busy if it wasn't for the podcast. And so adding the podcast on it, you know, doing a lot of work beforehand makes it flow a lot easier.
Amen to that. You know, I'm a fairly organized person, but even it just takes so much planning. And then you're not even just taking care of your own schedule, right? It's like, okay, I need episodes here, but you need to get ahead of it for the other people too. So all of a sudden you might come to this point and you're like, oh my gosh, I need more episodes. And you can't just say, hey, Jason, you want to talk tomorrow? Not many people are good with short notice.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, and it's funny, is like, you could have called me as long as I didn't have, which that's crazy. I always have something going on. But like, I'm okay with the, okay, I can just talk whenever thing. Like I don't have to have, but most people, I've realized most people aren't like me. Most people are very like, and I've offered like for people to come on the podcast and they're like, I don't think I can do that. You know, or like, they're like, I don't think I'm ready for that. And, you know, I find that really interesting because, you know, you're just two people having a conversation. And it just happens to be recorded. So, you know, but I've learned to be very graceful with other people, like learning that not everybody functions like I do. I think that's a big part too, you know.
I hear you. For the most part, I interview a lot of people that are consultants and speakers. So it's easy, right? And they can go with the flow for the most part. I know once or twice, people maybe more professional, where they have finally just admitted that they were super nervous. Like they said yes. And then, well, back in the days before pandemic, we were sitting beside each other. And then they're like, I'm so nervous. I'm like, don't be. We're two friends having a conversation. And then they kind of relax, right? So
yeah. You know, and I found that once people get into the conversation, they're like, oh, this is great. You know, this is, you know, so, but I think like getting over that hump for a lot of people is really scary.
Okay, I am throwing you a left curve here just because we're talking about personalities. And I know, you know, we're Instagram buddies and I scroll your feed and I see the highlights, but I don't necessarily read the details. I love your life and your wife looks amazing. Your boys look fantastic. I see you talking about the Enneagram.
Yeah.
Okay, so hold on. We got to go here really quick now that we're talking about personalities. So I'm totally into self-help, into all the personality types. Of all crazy things, I haven't done the Enneagram until about 2 months ago.
Really?
And I finally did it. And it actually gave me a few light bulb moments. You know, you think you know yourself pretty well based on DISC assessment and just learned experience, right? And then I did the Enneagram. Oh my gosh. It answered some really core things in my life. Like, why am I like this? Right. So I'm curious, what is your Enneagram number?
I'm a 3, like through and through. I'm a 3. Like, if you can, I'm the,
explain the 3.
Okay. A 3 is, a 3 is someone who does a lot of things to impress a lot of people.
Okay.
That's my main motivation. And this is super hard for me as a male guy to really admit, in that like a lot of my motivation comes from impressing other people. And one time I read like Western culture, especially the States, is like for an Enneagram 3, it's like you move an alcoholic to an apartment above a saloon. Like that, everything about American culture is about putting yourself out there. I mean, Instagram, all these things, about improving or impressing other people. And man, when I read that, like, and it was like, I don't want that to be me. Like, I don't want that to be me, but it is. I think that's the difference in the Enneagram versus other personality tests is other personality tests kind of tell you your traits, whereas the Enneagram kind of tells you your motivations behind what you do.
Yeah. Interesting. And I always say there's no bad or wrong personality.
No.
What you think might be bad, impressing people, makes you fantastic at communicating and putting yourself out there on social media, right?
Exactly.
When you said that, I'm like, that's why Jason is so good on social media. Look at me. If you go on my Instagram post, I don't know, I'm a weird I'm not introverted at all, but I wish I had more of what you have.
Yeah, but like, I'm not very self-protective either. Like, so like I can put are you a 6?
I'm an 8.
Oh, you're an 8. Interesting. 8s are interesting.
Yeah.
The 8s are very interesting because they are like they're the confrontational ones. They're the ones that are going to go out and, they'll make things right. And I wish I had more of that, as I don't have that. I don't have the ability to go in and have a conflict with somebody. Like, okay. I don't want there to be a conflict. I want everybody to get along, you know? I can now, but also I understand that, like, I can pull some of that. I understand that makes you great. And I can maybe, I can try to emulate that a little bit.
Yes.
And understand that that's something that's a weakness, or not a weakness. That I don't think it's necessarily a weakness, but it's definitely not a strength, right? For me. Yeah. So trying to feed and pull off of that. So my wife, she is 6, and 6 are the loyalists. They're the protectors of themselves. So like I go out there and I do all these crazy things. And I think of zero consequences because of it. Because I'm like, I need to do all this because I need to impress the people. And she's like, yeah, but like that kind of like hurts her safety. That's her, like, she always is like, well, the worst case scenario. She always sees the worst case scenario in any sort of kind of thing. And, when we took it together. And it's been one of the most impactful things for our marriage because we understand one another so much better now. That was we had a lot of fights because we didn't understand one another because we were so different. But now that we see one another's motivation, it's helped kind of, clear the air a little bit.
Yeah. It has, I thought, I'm like, okay, I was working with a gal, Louise. I'm actually going to have her on the show. I'm like, yeah, okay, it's time for the Enneagram in my life. I'm like, okay, whatever. One more personality test, right? It's kind of a little bit, and again, but also eager because I love learning, but I wasn't expecting it to knock my socks off. And my husband, he's not into any of this, but I grabbed the book and then started reading what I thought he was. He was pretty easy to diagnose, assess, whatever you want to call it. And he's like, yeah, that is me. And, even we've been together 23, many, many years, and I know him well, but reading through that, I went, oh, that's why you're like that. I kind of got it, but I didn't get it. Yeah. After 23 years, right?
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, we'd been married probably almost 10 years and like now, like I don't necessarily understand her, but like I can it's just, but I can understand that I don't understand her. Like, just like she's different, and that I just have to be okay with that sometimes.
Yeah. A lot, even again, 23 years or whatever we are now, I'm like, oh, right. That's why he's being that. Or before I'd be, what is wrong with him? Right. Yeah, now it's like, oh yeah, I get that. That's just not his DNA. But anyways, I know you've touched on it, and
so I'm gonna time out here, and I'm gonna push up. There's a podcast that has just come out talking all about the Enneagram and in ag. Okay. It's called the Type It Out podcast. It's with Taryn Dreeling and oh goodness, I don't know I don't know her co-host name. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it just started, and it's called the Type It Out podcast, talking all about the Enneagram and ag, and they're talking to each individual type. Their first episode was actually with an 8, and her name with Allie Kelly, and I found it was just, I am at the point where I enjoy all parts of it. Right. Because I have been kind of studying it off and on for the last few years. So I find it so if people are more interested about finding out the Enneagram, how it can help people in agriculture, I point everyone to that podcast, the Type It Out podcast.
Type It Out. Okay. I'll check it out. And one last point on that, I didn't even plan on going here, but don't you think we should learn this stuff in school? Or at least when school would be the place for a parent to teach your kids, but definitely before you get married. Right. When I went through that with Anthony after 20 some years, I'm like, how am I only figuring this out now?
Right.
Could you imagine had we got that when we first got married? When we first started dating? Oh my gosh.
So much avoided, and I think it should be something that every married couple should take together, because it helps me understand Carrie and helps her understand me a little bit more. And what's really cool now is we got our oldest son to take it.
Oh, cool.
And we knew what he was. We knew he was a 7. We could both the way he's the 7s are the people who they want to do everything because. So on the surface, a 7 and a 3 look very same.
Okay.
But their motivations are different.
Okay.
I want to do it for everybody else. 7, Levi, he wants to do it for himself.
Okay.
He doesn't want to miss out on the experiences.
Huh.
So it's super interesting. You can go all day long. I'm in the Dunning-Kruger effect on it, where I just now I'm at the point where I realize I don't understand it at all. Where I thought I was at the top, and you drop off when you start learning more and realize there's so much more to learn.
So true. And I don't have children, so I don't even think of it that way. So for your marriage and then as parents, oh my gosh, to know that about your kid, you could just totally adjust how you parent if you're there,
and we have talked we've talked about Levi is a 7, so we have to kind of let him have the experiences and figure it out for himself, even though we kind of know what's going to happen. He's got to figure it out for himself. So it's fun. It's interesting.
Okay, cool. That was an excellent rabbit trail that I didn't plan. No, I love it. So good. Okay, I want to get back to your podcast. And I asked you one of the most important things you've learned. What has surprised you, frustrated you, encouraged you? Pick any one of those about podcasting, whether it's the people, the journey, or mental health. Go wherever you want to go with that.
So I think, and you touched on this, and this is always the thing I want to talk about is people, we all have mental health, and I think when I started this podcast, I thought I was going to be talking about depression, anxiety, the mental disorders with people. But then I heard really, really early on, mental health is something that is on a spectrum. Yes. We can exist at any part of that spectrum at any time. And that really changed the way and changed my podcast so much. I was genuinely concerned about running out of content because I didn't want to get stale. I didn't want to get boring. But honestly, you can make anything about mental health. You can make anything it's so amazing how I'm able to see the world from totally different lens now because of this podcast. I'm able to see things, how might somebody be thinking in this situation? Or, I didn't necessarily think of the mental constraints that a drought might put on somebody. I didn't even think about that. All I saw were the financial things. So obviously this year, that's man, I worry about how those people are doing in a drought, because I've known what a drought has been like. We had an awful drought in 2012. So I know what that feels like. I've seen people have to sell cows because of a drought, and it's a terrible, terrible feeling. But like being able to like be totally okay with addressing that and being like out in front of it, because I can take it, like I can be the person who goes out and talks about these things. So other people may not have to. And that's another really, really cool thing about my podcast. And somebody actually came up to me, a friend of mine. We were actually sitting in line. Well, yeah, I'll say, I won't say who he was, but we were sitting in line at our weigh-in for our county fair steers, not this past year, but the year before. And he said, I love listening to your podcast because I can go through all these things in my mind. I can hear you say the things, and it just, nobody has to know about it. It's super like safe for him. He doesn't have to like tell everybody what he's going through. He's at that point. Now, obviously, I recommend anybody talk to someone, but if it's a good place for you to start, a podcast is like the most safest, easiest place for people to do, because nobody has to know that you're listening to it but you.
Yes. That's funny. That angle is why I started my podcast, and where podcasting changed my life. I'm an entrepreneur ×2, right? So when you are in business for yourself, it's tough. There's a lot of worry, a lot of strain. There's financial, there's so much to it, right? And in the early years, I'm like, oh my gosh, why do I feel fear? You're trying to build a business and revenue and grow. I'm like, why do I feel fear about this? And I'm like, oh, I'm the only one that feels this, right? That's what I thought. And then I started listening to all these fantastic entrepreneurship podcasts. And then they started just little drips. Oh, Tony Robbins feels fear. So-and-so. Oh, I'm not alone. There's not something wrong with me, right? Yeah, so I could see where somebody would listen to a mental health podcast and go, oh, what I feel is normal, right? And then that's just that when you can hear somebody talk about something hard and you can relate, and that feeling of I'm not alone, or there's not something broken or wrong with me right there. Like even I can feel that feeling like, oh, right? So I can imagine listeners to your show go, oh, right? Yeah.
I've gotten so many messages just about that same thing. Like, oh man, I've related. So, and it's funny, it's different people relate to different podcasts more. And, sometimes it's what's really funny is like, I'll be like, I don't know, are people really going to enjoy this one? But then they're like, I get the mess. Those are the ones that seem to get the most response. And it's just so funny to me. Like, and again, it just goes to show that everybody relates to something different because we're all different. And it's really, really cool to see how, you can impact people.
Yeah, absolutely. I just had that same moment too. My show, the Impact Farming Show, is mainly geared towards business content, right?
Sure.
I kind of do 3 pillars, but I tend to bring in a lot of mental health because one, if the farmer isn't healthy physically or mentally, how's the business going to do? And you know what? I have the platform, access to the guests. It's important to me. I want to spread the word, but every once in a while I go, okay, well, my show's not mental health. Should I go there? Will people want to hear it? And guess what? Every time I do, I'm a few episodes in, those are some of my most popular episodes.
Yeah. So, and I always talked about this, and my friend Aiden Sutter, who I'm not sure if you've been connected with her. She's not on Instagram, but it's somebody you definitely should be connected to. She mentioned to me one time about when you change your shift, the shift of how you think about this, the farmer has to start seeing themselves as an asset. Much as they would a piece of equipment or a piece of land or whatever. You have a herd of cows, you vaccinate them. You have a health protocol. Piece of machinery, you change the oil. You grease it. All the things. That's kind of what mental health, talking about it, is for the farmer. Like it's greasing the joints. It's vaccinating the herd. I mean, that's what that same sort of logic applies to the most important asset, which is the human asset.
Amen. I say that to my husband all the time. I said, you're the farmer. Take care of yourself. Because if you're not here, we don't have a farm, right?
Yeah. And that's like, and I think it's so hard because so many farmers are so unselfish, and that's a good thing, right? But we have to start shifting that paradigm a little bit and helping them to understand that you're not being selfish when you take care of yourself. I mean, that's the least selfish thing you do, because if you take better care of yourself, then you show up for every part of your life, your business, your family, whatever you do in life. If you are your best self, you're going to make all those things that much better.
Amen. I learned that a long time ago. And I think farmers, women have problems with this, right? Everybody has problems, but if you don't feel the best on the inside, how do you give the best?
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
I know as soon as I'm tired, if I'm pushing myself too hard, I need to recharge. Otherwise, I can't give and do well, exactly. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Farmers do need to learn that.
They do. And, I mean, I've seen it and I know it. I've lived it. I've seen my dad, but, love my dad. He's 85. But man, I've just seen him. I never knew we were having tough times. I know we were now looking back, but I never knew we were. And, and there's something to be said for that. I thought my childhood was great because it was. But, I never saw the struggles. And I think people are a lot more comfortable with their own struggles if they see other people struggling, but also, taking the time to take themselves away from it every once in a while. I remember my dad, we used to show horses. I never showed horses very much, but the rest of my family did. They kind of got out of it. I'm the baby of the family, and they kind of got out of it when I was old enough. I just remember, it's so funny now thinking back, but I remember my dad always being on payphones. This was before cell phones, right? My dad would be on payphones running business, because he had a sale barn back home that he had to take calls on and stuff. And it's just, he never left work behind. And I found it very important to make sure that I do that.
Nice. Wise words. Okay. Should we switch gears? I am curious, and I don't know if I would want to answer this because I don't like to play favorites because I love all my episodes, but has there been any episode that has just like hit you in the gut? Got you?
It's funny. There's several. And I answer differently every time. Okay. Because everyone has affected me. Yeah. I've never came away from a podcast and been like, I wish I wouldn't have recorded that. True. Every single podcast has had an impact on me. But the one that's on the top of my brain right now is with one of my greatest friends in the world now. We've never met in real life. But he's just such an incredible friend. I'm sorry. I'm getting emotional. I don't even know where this is coming from. It's my buddy, Nathan Brown. He's a farmer in Ohio, and a mental health advocate. And the guy just does so much for so many people. And he's changed me, and his story, I encourage, if you're not going to listen to any of my podcasts right now, go listen to episode 48 with Nathan Brown, because it'll change the way you see things. And it's funny. I remember sitting down recording, and I was like, all right, we were wrapping up the episode, and he was like, oh, that's it. Like it went so fast with him. And he's just got such an incredible story. And every single person I've talked to though has an incredible story. Somebody I had Addie Yoder on the podcast. She was episode 100 just a couple of weeks ago, and she said one time she was talking to Rob Sharkey about how do you find so many interesting people? And he's like, no, it's not that I find interesting people, it's that everybody is interesting. Everybody has something to offer. And I just am so fortunate to be able to find so many great people and like I said, I've made connections with. I count you as a friend. I count Nathan as a friend.
Yeah.
We're friends. You know, we haven't met in real life. And that's just kind of the difference. But that's great. The world that we live in, that we're able to connect with people who we would have never had the chance to connect to otherwise.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, that one right now is the one that's really, really hitting home for me, because I was thinking about that earlier. And, you know, Nathan's the one who's coming to the top of my head.
Lovely. And you know what? Everybody does have their own story. And agriculture is just a great community. So
for sure. Yeah. I agree.
And Rob Sharkey, he's awesome.
He's like the Joe Rogan.
Yeah, he is. He's good. I had him on the show and I gave him the gears. We were just having he was up in Egg Days in Brandon, Manitoba here. He was in a booth and I interviewed him. So we had a good time.
Awesome.
Yeah. Anthony and I used to be outfitters. We'd take Americans waterfowl hunting.
Oh, wow.
So I discovered that I had that in common with.
Right.
And then we chatted shop a little bit on that. So he's a great guy.
So it's so funny. He's just over the river. I'd say he's probably about 3 hours from me. But the landscape of where he lives is so much different.
Really?
I mean, it's flat corn country, sea for miles. I don't think of deer hunting when I think of where he lives. Mm-hmm. Where I live, I think about deer hunting. It's woods, it's hills, it's, you know, I feel it's more wild here. You know, it's just, I find it funny that but I mean, you know, I know that they grow big deer in corn country. They grow a lot bigger deer than we do. It's just funny. It's funny how different things can be even when they're relatively close.
That's neat. I didn't realize you lived so close to him.
Yeah.
Yes, and the deer love the corn. I can attest to it. And,
I'm sure.
We go into our cornfield. We do one cornfield, and there's just rings eaten out, and then the side of the crop field, cob missing. It's funny. It's actually quite hilarious. It's annoying, but they got to eat, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So thank you for sharing that. I am curious. I want to kind of ebb and flow and switch gears again. You chat with a lot of people about mental health. It's very important to you. You're in the healthcare profession. In an ideal world, I have some thoughts about this once in a while. In an ideal world, what would you like to see in place? And again, I'm going to leave this open-ended in terms of education, support, whatever you want to do to create and support people in agriculture, even outside, about mental health. What do you think we need?
We need to start at the grassroots. We need to go down to the bottom. All the most influential things in history have started with youth. This is a really terrible comparison, but it's the one thing that, but it does. The reason, just hear me out on this one. The reason Hitler was so successful is because of the Hitler Youth. Obviously, so many terrible things, but so many of those terrible things that he was able to do was because he had the grips of the youth. We can learn a really important lesson from that. There's not anything useful we can learn from Hitler other than that. And that if you can talk to the youth, if we can get the youth talking about mental health, and I think we're starting to, if we can get the youth started talking about mental health, if it starts to become part of more of their vernacular, it's going to be common for them to talk about it as adults. And I've always said my pinnacle of success is if I get to speak at the National FFA convention to all the FFA kids in America. That's what I see. That's like my penultimate goal. And, because I think that's really where we need, because we need to look at the long term here. And the long term is obviously the future, and the youth is the future. And we're doing a better job of that. But it needs to be, we need to have a concentrated effort there.
It's so funny that you said that example of all things.
That's the only thing it's the thing that came to my head.
I was wondering if that's where you're going to go. I think, and I mean, I'm not going to go here very much because now we can get a little political and all of that stuff. But right now in Canada and some of the stuff that's going on, you ask many of the people living here, we're not feeling so great about freedoms. Hey, some people aren't even concerned, but you hit the nail on the head. The education needs to start with the kids.
Yep.
Because actually, a lot of them say many of them haven't even learned about the Holocaust. But I mean, I digress here, but that's exactly, if you don't get the kids and build that knowledge, same with agriculture, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's why I don't, do you guys have FFA in Canada?
We have 4-H. Very similar.
4-H, which is very similar. I mean, I was in 4-H, not FFA when I was growing up. And it's the same sort of thing, getting these programs, getting these kids through FFA and 4-H to where it's part of the curriculum. I think that's a really important place to start.
Hey, question for you. And I'm familiar with FFA, but not to the full extent. We don't have that here. Is that in the school system, or is it like 4-H, like a standalone community program?
No, it's in the high school.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah, that's it's part of. Yeah, it really is, and that's why. So from down here, FFA kind of wields a little more power because it's part of their school curriculum.
Probably decided on by state. Not all states. I don't know, right?
I think all states have them. I think all states have. Yeah, I even think Puerto Rico has it too.
Wow. See, 4-H, I love it. I'm a big advocate. I mean, my ability to speak in public, so many things, scholarships, like 4-H has done so well for me. And I love the program. But the downfall of that is it's a community program.
Yeah.
In rural communities. So the ones that are joining are the ones that already know-ish.
No, you're right.
Right?
No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I know people, and it's different from state to state. So so everything 4-H around where I live is centered around livestock. Okay. Because that's what we do. Not much outside of that. Everything, you show your animals at the fair, and that's pretty much what 4-H is. Now, I had some people who moved down here from North Dakota, and they're like, they wanted to be involved in 4-H, but the things they were doing in North Dakota, we weren't really doing here. Wow. So, and they weren't really we have a university just down the road, and he was a professor there. So they weren't really technically a part of it's in Rolla, which to me, I think Rolla is a big town. It's like 20,000 people. I know it's not a big town, but to me it is. I don't know. But there is, you can feel disconnected from the rural community in a town that size, where in Cuba, that's not so much the case. Where I live in Cuba. So, you're right. FFA, or I'm sorry, 4-H is more of a, decentralized type program where like each individual chapter is so much different.
Yeah. And it's great. Don't get me wrong. I love it.
Yeah.
But we do also up here, we have a program called Egg in the Classroom. It's an organization, and they bring agriculture in, and that's growing in momentum too. I don't think it's in all schools. I'm not sure on their progress, but yeah, that's neat that FFA is part of the curriculum, because look where we're at right now. We have people that are 98% of the population don't farm. We know that 2% are farmers. Right. So when 98% of our customers don't have a hot clue, and they think a steak gets on the shelf by growing on the shelf, I don't know.
They don't know the whole process.
No, that's dangerous. And
it is dangerous. And that's why we have so much disinformation out there, is because people are so, and this is a two-way street. We have to be more open ourselves too. But we need to open those lines of communication between producer and up. And again, I think we got to start with the youth. We need to do it in the classrooms. We need to have more education of young people before they get disinformation.
Amen. I agree. Okay. That's fantastic. I like that. So your biggest thing to change mental health would be start with the youth.
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. I agree wholeheartedly. Okay, so I want to do something a little bit different. I'm excited to do this format. I want to ask you a few kind of rapid fire, whatever, some quick questions about some random stuff.
There's never a quick question with me. I'm sorry.
That's good. I like it. It's a great conversation.
I'm so long-winded and I'm sorry.
I love it. I love it. So, okay, I'm a reader. I love books. Like, I'm addicted. If I would say I have an addiction in life, it would be books.
So you and Carrie are the same way. Carrie reads probably 20 books a month. It's crazy.
That's all I can say.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about books. So I want to ask you, I assume you're a reader. Are you a reader?
I am a audiobook reader.
Okay.
Which counts.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to say, if you don't have a book in mind, I want to know a book that has changed your life.
Well, I definitely have that. And that's Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins.
Oh, okay.
Have you read it? Have you heard of it?
I have watched YouTube videos with him in it.
He's incredible. If I had to say there was one book that changed my life, that book changed my life. Okay. Totally changed the way I see the world. Totally, not necessarily see the world, changed the way I saw myself and what I was capable of. Okay. Because I saw myself as super busy before, right? And like I totally didn't understand what I was really capable of. If I would not have read Can't Hurt Me, I wouldn't have had a podcast.
Really?
If I didn't read Can't Hurt Me, I would not run like I run. I would not work out like I work out. Wow. I would not do so many things the way that I do. I wouldn't wake up at 4 a.m. I guarantee you that, like I do now, if it wasn't for that book. That book totally changed my life. Totally changed what I realized, helped me realize what I was capable of.
Wow. I have listened to him, seen the book. And again, I'll tell you something funny. Before I do podcasts, you'll laugh. Before I do podcasts, or if I'm traveling and going into sales meetings, it's important to be in a happy demeanor, right? Like, I like being mentally up and excited.
Sure.
So I actually turn on YouTube videos, Motiversity, in different channels, motivation, and they have like these hardcore, it's mainly men, and David Goggins is usually one of the voices, and he's just yelling, and it's like, yes, drill sergeant.
I know. I mean, and it just to hear the things that he went through and still perform the ways that he's been able to perform and do the things that he's been able to do. I mean, it's just like, well, he can do all that, I can surely do this. You know what I mean? So like, it just totally changed the trajectory of my life. Totally.
I think I might take that recommendation. You heard where we're at here in Canada and our pandemic and things going on, and just personally in life, sometimes you just need, and again, motivation's internal, but books stimulate that and give you those ideas. But I'm at a point where I just need to pivot and work on resiliency, which I have a lot of, but we all need more of it. I'm almost wondering if
that's the book for you. Like it is, like, it totally changed me. Totally. I was thinking about it today, how much that book's, I've read it. So I actually do recommend getting the audiobook, because I've got it both the print form and audiobook. I recommend the audiobook because he gives he gives like little inter chapter like chats with another guy. So it's like a podcast within the audiobook, like several different little ones, like giving you backstories, more backstory of the backstory.
Oh, interesting.
Super interesting. Like, it's like, and again, I'll probably listen to it this year again before the year's over, because it's been that important to me.
I think after we're done this, now I'm going to rush you. Let's go.
Yeah. No. I mean, I understand.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I think I have a new book on Audible, my subscription. I think I have a credit. I'm going to download that right away because I think that's just something that could give me that next little bit for this next stage in life.
Yeah, it's like I said, if you're in the position where you're looking at yourself at a transition type period, it's absolutely the book for you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Ooh, I'm so glad I asked.
See, I told you there's no such thing as a short answer.
Oh no, I love it. This is great. So, second question. I'm always curious people in their lived experience, and like just that book answer that you gave. That's so cool, right? What's impacted you. So I want to go a little bit different and lived experience and advice. What is the best advice you have received in life?
So this probably will not be what you're expecting. And I thought about this too. This is always, my dad's talked so much to me. My dad's taught me so much. And, just through his lived experience, I've learned so much. I remember this. This is so like specific, but he was talking one time, like any community, there's a place where all the farmers go and drink coffee in the mornings. We're actually, our place is a truck stop. There's a truck stop in Cuba, and they go out in there and drink coffee in the morning. And he said one day all the guys were in there, the older guys were complaining. I just happened to be with him that day. I think I was in college or maybe high school, I don't remember. But all the guys in there were talking about how much money their wives would spend at like the beauty shop or on makeup or whatever, and then my dad and I were in the truck later, after, and he said, all those guys talking about all that, complaining so much about how much their wives spend on themselves. And I was like, I will never complain about my wife spending that money on herself to keep herself, very careful, like looking good. But I mean, keep up, like, because that's important, because I think people do tend to sometimes, it goes back to that whole self-care thing and let themselves kind of drift a little. And he told me, my mom and dad have been together for 60 plus years now. And one of the key things he said is, keep her happy, keep her beautiful. And if you see my mom's in her 80s too, and she's still, she's beautiful. And, I was, as far as a married man, that's like as far as lessons passed down that I will make sure and pass down to my sons, because I have 4 of them. That's definitely at the top of the list. Don't ever complain about that, because it's so important and not just the woman, but the man too, to, take care of yourself, because you want to be there for that other person. That's what a relationship is.
Nice. I did not expect that, but that's fantastic. That goes back to that self-care, right? And
exactly,
that happens in life and we get busy. But if your wife has taken the time to take care of herself and look good and feel good, right? If you don't feel good inside, you're not.
Yeah,
good, right?
Absolutely. And, and men and women
and outside, but right. If you take care of yourself on the outside and you spend time on you on the outside, you feel good on the inside, and 100%. Then that radiates right back out, doesn't it?
100%. Yeah. And it's, I remember telling Carrie that when we first got married, and she's taken it to heart.
Aw, that's nice. Yeah. One of the things I wanted to mention to you, I really do admire you. And I didn't say that before. I'm going to say it now.
Well, thank you.
I do admire you. And I think you are, I don't know you that well. I would consider you a friend from Instagram, but it just seems like you walk with so much integrity and put so much thought and effort into your wife and kids and the farm. I just really enjoy watching you.
Well, thank you. It's hard sometimes to share all the things, and sometimes, it's, do people really care? But it's nice to know that people do care, because I do put a lot of intent in it. And And it's not fake. I mean, everything, like I hope that I'm the same person that I would seem to be online that I am in person. You know what I mean? Like I have many flaws, but one of those is not disingenuous, not being disingenuous. I am sometimes genuine to a fault. So it's, I take a lot of pride in that.
You know what? And again, this is our first time chatting in person, but you are exactly what you are on social media. Again, to real life might be different, but here's the thing. I have a bulletproof radar for people. And I can tell that the way you are on social media to here is just totally genuine, and it's cool. I really respect your journey and the way you nurture your wife and everything in your life. So really cool. Kudos to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So that was best advice, and that was lovely. It seems like your dad has been a big influence.
He's huge.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. That's cool to have a great example like that too. I have an amazing parents. I'm so lucky as well. Now let's flip that. You have lived X many years on this earth. You have done all these things. You talk to all these people. Let's pretend you are 120, because by the time, hopefully we get to the point where we're passing on, we're 120. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to live ripe, long lives by that point. So let's assume you are 120 and you have a pen and a paper, and you are going to leave some notes for the next generation. And you got to leave like a couple thoughts of the most impactful things you have learned. No pressure.
Yeah. Well, first thing, we've said it, it's been a recurring theme throughout this is, take care of yourself. There's so many things that we get caught up with busy work on stuff and things that just don't matter. Like, really sit down and figure out what matters to you. And you'll be very surprised at like the stuff in your life you can cut out. I used to not think I didn't think I could live without college football for a long time, like watching it on TV, playing it at one point in my life, but then watching college football. And I'm finding out it's okay. Like we cut off all of our TV and everything. So like if you really sit down and really find out what's really, really important to you, you will make time for that. You will definitely make the time. And Carrie always says, like, you can always tell what's important to people because that's what they spend their time and their money on. So choose wisely what you spend both your time and your money on. I've learned it the hard way. Be more intentional. Live every day with intentionality. And I think to me, the definition of hell is you are on your deathbed and you're getting ready to meet God. And right before you meet him, you get introduced to somebody and they're a total stranger. And you ask them who they are. And they tell you that I am who you were supposed to be.
Oh,
yeah. I heard that one time, and like, it just stopped me in my tracks. And like, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I goof off plenty. Like, and I do some really regretful things. But
right?
Yeah, everybody does, So like, but trying to live your life with more intentionality. Number one, I don't think there's like really any more profound advice than I can give than that. It's changed me. Living that way has changed me.
Wow. Well, you can tell. I mean, it shows through too in your actions. You're a busy guy. You take care of a lot of people, a lot of things that are important to you. So that's fantastic. Good. I hope that at 120 years old, you are living those words, and I know you will be, and meeting that guy and you're going, hey buddy, that's you, that's me. I did it.
That's the hope. Yeah. That's the hope.
And I trust you will be. That's awesome. Jason, this has been so much fun. Much fun. I'm so happy we took the time to do this. If people want to connect with you and tune into your podcast, download your podcast, how can they connect with you?
So I'm at a lot of places. I mean, everything is Ag State of Mind. I'm all across social media, Ag State of Mind. I have a website where sometimes I used to write a lot more blogs. I probably haven't written one in 4 or 5 months just because that's the thing I said was going to fall off first. So I haven't done that, but writing is actually my first love. Like, I love to write. I am more of a writer than a speaker, believe it or not. So I really enjoy, but you can find out links. I have mental health resources on my website, agstateofmind.com. And then you can find my podcast, Ag State of Mind, across wherever you get your podcasts. It's, like I said, we're, as of today, when we're recording this, I just released my 103rd episode. So we're cruising right along.
Nice. That is great. And I'll put links to your show and your website and everything in the show notes as well. So
that's awesome.
Jason, thank you for the work you do. I know you impact so many. Thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. And one day when the world gets back to normal, you and I are going to meet in real life, right?
We will. At a farm show somewhere, I'm sure.
Of course. Yep.
I'm looking forward to it.
I'm sure you are. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Okay. And you in the audience, I hope you loved this episode as much as I did. I'm sure you did. Like it, share it, and get it out there, because you know what? Jason does a fantastic podcast, and I would love for every farmer to listen and soak that up, because farming's tough. We all need the support to continue on day to day in this industry, right? I love farming, but we all know it can be challenging. So thank you guys for tuning in. And again, thank you, Jason. See you guys next week. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.